Hello everyone, this is the 7th video of chapter 8, solving ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. In this lesson, you will factor trinomials of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, and later you will solve equations using zero product property. To factor a trinomial of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, find two integers m and p whose product is equal to ac and whose sum is equal to b. There are different ways to do this, and I will share how I used to teach in Korea. My students called it Miss Kim's method, but I did not make this strategy. I'm just sharing how I would use it to solve it. If there are no integers that satisfy these requirements, the polynomial is a prime, but just be careful that before you claim that it's going to be a prime, double check that if you have tried every single combination. On previous lesson, we practiced what two numbers do you need to multiply to get the c value, while when you add those two numbers, it becomes 27. On this problem, the difference on here is instead of having 1 in the front of x squared, now you're going to have other numbers than 1 as your coefficient. However, the method is similar. If you remember me constantly writing x on the bottom, the reason was because you have to think about what two numbers you need to multiply to get 5x squared. In this case, let me start by writing 5 on the top. And now, if you think about two numbers to get 10, there are several combinations, but let me start with 5 and 2. Now, my next step is you're going to multiply these two numbers. And the numbers that you get by cross-multiplying, when you add them, it has to equal to 27x. In this case, 5x times 2 will be 10x, and x times 5 is 5x. When you add them, I have to get 27x. In this case, this is not true. So now you're going to erase and you're going to try another combination. What if I change the order of the combination? So instead of having 5 and 2, what if I had 2 and 5? And I'm going to now cross multiply these two numbers to see if they make 27x. 5x times 5 is 25x, and x times 2 is 2x, and when I add them, I actually get 27x. After you double check that this is true, and now if you write straight, you're going to have 5x plus 2, and the next one, again, you will write x, and since this is positive 5, I'll write plus 5. To double check, you will distribute this. 5x times x is 5x squared, and 5x times 5 is 25x. 2 times x is 2x, and the last number will be equal to 10. If you simplify this, 5x squared plus 27x plus 10, which is what you begin with, and that's how I know for sure that this is my factor form. I know that this is very confusing at first. However, if you practice multiple times, these combinations will come to you easily and quicker. Here is part B. Again, we're going to find what two numbers do you need to multiply to get 4x squared, and what two numbers do you need to multiply to get 32. While you cross multiply, when you add them, you have to get 24x. Now, if you're trying to do all of those at once, it's very confusing. So take step by step. The first one, come up with what two combinations do you need to multiply to get 4x squared. I'm going to begin by writing 2x and 2x. Now, what two numbers do you need to multiply to get 32? Well, when you cross multiply and when you add them, you'll get 24x. Let's try with 4 and 8. If I cross multiply 2x times 8, I will get 16x. 2x times 4 is equal to 8x. When you add them, this one does make 24x. When you write a factor form, just make sure that you write a cross. So first one will be 2x plus 4. The second one will be 2x plus 8. And that is my factor form. You can always distribute to see if I can get the original expression. Now the second example is when your A and C are both positive while your B is negative. The strategy on all different situations will be same. It's based on guess and check. So come up with two numbers. When you multiply, you will get 24x squared. Another combination with when you multiply, you will get 3. Now when you cross multiply and add those two numbers, it has to equal to negative 22x. When you're dealing with a bigger number, it tends to get difficult because there are more combinations that you can make. My first step in this case will be starting with a 3. Since 3 has only one possible answer with 1 and 3, To make 24x squared, let's begin by when you have 12x with 2x. If you cross multiply this number, I will get 36x, and 2x times 1 is 2x. When I add them, I have to get negative 22x, which this one is not true. Again, since this is based on guess and check, you are going to erase this if it didn't work and try one more time. What if I try 6x with 4x? 6x times 3 is 18x. 4x times 1 is 4x. When I add them, I get 22x. Now this number is so close because all I need is just negative. If I know that this combination works except I just need a negative, let me think about when you were multiplying. 1 times 3 will get you 3, but also if I had negative 1 times negative 3 will get you positive 3. With the new number, let's try one more time to see if I can get negative 22x. 6x times negative 3 will be negative 18x. 4x times negative 1 will be negative 4x. When I add them, I will get negative 22x. So I've been double checking to see if it's actually true. Once you know that this is true, now you're going to write a factor form. When you write a factor form, again, you go across. So 6x minus 1 times 4x. Since this is negative 3, you don't have to write plus minus 3 because eventually you have to simplify. And here, this is my factor form. Part B. Before I go over the solutions, if you can practice this one more time on your own, that would be great. You can pause here before you see the solutions if you'd like. Come up with two numbers when you multiply, you'll get 10x squared. I'll go with 5x and 2x. Come up with two numbers when you multiply, you will get 12. And keep in mind, you'll be cross multiplying this, and later when you add them, it has to be equal to negative 23x. Because I know that when I add just positive numbers, it's not going to make negative. Let's try with negative 3 and negative 4. When I cross multiply this, I'll get negative 20x. When I cross multiply 2x with negative 3, I'll get negative 6x. When I add them, I'll get negative 26x, which is not what I'm looking for. So let's try one more time. What if I had negative 4x on here and negative 3x on this side? This one makes negative 15x, and 2x times negative 4x will be negative 8x. And luckily on my second trial, I noticed negative 15x minus 8x will equal to negative 23x. Once you double check, now the last step will be you writing in factor form. The first one is 5x minus 4x times, you write straight, 2x minus 3x, and that's how I know this is going to be factor form. Example number 3, determine whether a polynomial is prime or not. If you remember, the prime in this case means it cannot be factored. I'm going to find what two numbers do I need to multiply to get 3x squared. In this case, let's write 3x and x. If I had negative 5 and 1, when I multiply, I'll get negative 5. But let's see if when I add them, they will make 7x. This one is 3x, and I cross multiply this, becomes negative 5x, which is not equal to 7x. What if I change the order? If I had 5 and negative 1, this one makes negative 3x. X times 5 is 5x. When I add them, it's still not 7x. If I had negative 1 in here and 5 on this side, this one makes 15x. X times negative 1 is negative 1x, and they are not equal to 7x. If I had positive 1, negative 5 in here, 3x times negative 5 is negative 15x, and then x times 1 is positive 1x. When I add them, they become negative 14x. So I know that this is all combinations that you can come up with, and if none of them works, this is called prime polynomial. Part B, again, 3x times x will get you 3x squared. If I had two positive numbers, it will not add up to negative. So if I had negative 1 and negative 3, they will make positive 3 when you multiply. 3x times negative 3 is equal to negative 9x. X times negative 1 is equal to negative 1x, which is negative 10x. And that's not what I'm looking for. So here's another combination, negative 3 and negative 1. If I switch the order, 3x times negative 1 will become negative 3x. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. And they become negative 6x. Again, it's not what I'm looking for. And that is the only combinations that you can make. And since none of them worked, I could call it, this is the prime polynomial. Next two slides, we'll be using factoring and zero product property to solve an equation in real life. For this real-world example number 4, please pause this video for a second and read the problem. In here, by using the equation, h is equal to negative 16t squared plus vt plus h0. They are telling you some numbers that you could plug it in. The first information is that h is equal to 30. You do not know how much time it took. However, you know the velocity is equal to 64 feet per second, and t stay the same. While the initial height was 2 feet above the ground, you can put 2 for h0. To solve this equation, you'll be using zero product property. By 1, making sure that you have 0 on one side. If I subtract 30 from both sides, you will get 0 on here, while you will get negative 16t squared plus 64t minus 28. Since you need to have a product, you'll be factoring this form. Now from here, you could guess and check the method that I've been using, or you can use the GCF of 3 terms, and it looks like they all have 4 in common. Whichever you prefer should be okay, but on this case, I'll just stick to the method that I've been using. If I had negative 8t and positive 2t, when I multiply them, this will become negative 16t squared. In here, if I had negative 28 with positive 1, when you multiply them, I'll get negative 28. Let's double check if they actually make 64t when I add them. Negative 8t plus 1 is negative 8t. 2t times negative 28 is equal to negative 56. When I add them, that is equal to negative 64t, which is very close to the b value. All I need is just positive number. So instead of having negative on top, if I switch the order, negative 8t times negative 1 will be positive 8t. 2t times 28 is positive 56t. And thus, when you add them, I'll get positive 64t. So which means if you write in factor form, negative 8t plus 28 is in one group, and the second group is 2t minus 1. Now that it's ready to use ZPP, if I set the first group equal to 0, subtract 28 on both sides, I'll get negative 8t is equal to negative 28. If you divide by negative 8 on both sides, t is equal to 28 over 8, which is simplified to 7 over 2. The second group also has to equal to 0. 2t minus 1 is equal to 0. If you add 1 on both sides, 2t is equal to 1, and t has to equal to 1/2. This means the first half seconds is representing how long it takes the rocket to reach a height of 30 feet on its way up. The second time, 7.5 seconds, represent how long it will take for the rocket to reach the height of 30 feet. This is the end of the lesson. Thanks for learning with me.